Hello guys. So today we'll be discussing principles of good user interface design, meaning what makes a user interface good, what makes a user interface appealing. So enough talk, let's dive right in. Our first principle is balance. And balance simply means you arranging your elements and negative space in your design such that one element doesn't overpower the other element, unless it's supposed to. When you have a UI that is not balanced, the individual elements compete with the whole design. So as a result, things draw attention to themselves. And if we look at the design closely, we have the one on the left where everything isn't balanced, it's scattered all over the place. As a result, each element is drawing attention to themselves, whereas the design on the right is perfectly balanced, so you have some sort of flow to guide you on what you are looking at. So the second principle is rhythm, and rhythm is more or less what we define as something that occurs at intervals, between elements, that are predictable. And predictability here simply means things that would have the same type of size, the same type of shape, the same type of length, and in turn it makes it easy for users to identify and know what these elements are and what to expect from those elements. So if we look at this now, we have a screenshot of LinkedIn messaging, and if you look at it, we have the profile image, we have the title of the message, and then we have a small portion of example of the text you'll be expecting. You know, Using that sort of thing, we can create a rhythm of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, meaning the user first sees the image, it sees the title of the text or the message he or she is getting, as well as a pretext, something to show the beginning of that message before he or she can click. You know, this creates some kind of rhythm, so the user knows what comes next. As a result, it's easier for the user to use that product. So we have the third principle, and the third principle is harmony. Sometimes harmony is also referred to as unity. Okay, and harmony is more or less when visual elements relate to and they sort of complement each other. Think of harmony as a glue that holds individual visual elements in your design together, such that you can form something meaningful, from them. So, and in most cases, we can say that harmony can be formed from some sort of rhythm or from some sort of repetition. You know, Harmony tends to help us create a clear flow of our design. So, let's look at this image again now. We have our text boxes, and then we have first name, we have last name. If you look at this, there's even spacing within those boxes that's on the inside. The total length of those two text boxes equals the total length of the email and the phone number fields. So as a result, we have this sort of harmony where everything seems to be balanced with each other. As a result, you have this flow that is seamless for the user. And we said reading can be gotten from this. So if you look closely, we have the label, we have the field, we have the label, we have the field, we have the label, we have the field. So you can also achieve harmony or unity through the aid of things like repetition, through the aid of things like rhythms. So we have the fourth principle, which is dominance. Okay, and dominance means to command, means to control or to prevail over others. Okay, so you might be wondering why we would need something that controls in our design. You know, the main essence for having dominance is so that we can create a focal point, where people would get to at first glance. Okay, so it's more or less like an entry point for your design. We use dominance to help guide the user on more or less where to begin in your design, and then lead them to the next point, and so on and so forth. So if we look closely at the image here again, the first thing that strikes your attention is the image. Okay, that's a clear example of dominance. The first thing you see is the image. So, with that, we can now move on to what we call secondary levels of dominance to tertiary levels of dominance, where from the image now we now know, oh, I love this hoodie. What's next? Oh, the name of the hoodie comes next. It's a Nike hoodie. We have the name there. The next thing that comes to your attention is, oh, how much is it? So you can see dominance can create this hierarchy for you within text as well. So we have the bigger text being the title, then we have the next, text being the price, and then from there we can have some description, and then we now have some sort of contrast where we now have the ability to add it to our cart, and then that's the next step. So dominance is a really, really powerful tool in design, and it will help you create some kind of purposeful flow where you can now be the one to dictate how the design would play out. So we have the fifth principle, and the fifth principle is alignment. This is probably one of the most overlooked principle, by a lot of beginners. You know, Alignment is one thing that works all the time. Okay, and alignment is so important that new designers fail to do this a lot. Alignment tends to help make your design look much more presentable, even though you might not be seeing it. But at the end of the day, alignment tends to bring some sort of balance. When things align well, when things meet at certain points, there's this sort of balance you get. Alignment is straightforward. Alignment is simply just arranging things in a straight line. Okay, or arranging things in a correct or in a relative position. So it's simple enough, but at the same time it's something people don't do enough. So as a result, designs tend to be off-putting. you know so the sixth principle is proximity. Now proximity simply means a distance between visual elements. Okay, you know so in most cases we use proximity to signal relationships between elements. Okay, so when elements are close together, they are perceived as one group, and elements that are far from each other are seen as individual elements. The principle of proximity is simple. It's more or less a process of ensuring that related elements are sort of placed together, to form, something that we can say, all of this signifies one thing, or all of this signifies one element. So if you look closely at the image now, on the left, more or less everything is so closely packed together that we can't say, oh, this element has multiple items in it. There's no proper spacing between them. As a result, we more or less see it as one element. Whereas on the right, we have the placeholder for the image, then we have the text boxes that states the name of the product, then we have you know buttons to signify if we want to buy or if we want to save for later, and all of that is grouped into one element, and then we have proper spacing, we have proper proximity to indicate that, oh, this is one element and then the other is another element. So this is what proximity does for your design. So the seventh principle is white space. Google is a wonderful example of white space. White space is more or less also referred to as negative space. Okay, it's the portion or area of your design that does not include a single design element, nothing at all, absolutely nothing. That's what we call white space. It's more or less, what designers tag as space being effectively empty. You know, And a lot of new designers don't do this a lot. They tend to feel, oh, the design needs more in it, and as a result, they tend to fill up the entire space. When you create white space in your design, it sort of allows your design to breathe. It allows your design to be much more open, and as a result, users tend to find what they are looking for easily because they don't have to try to download a lot of information to get to what they are going to. So the eighth principle is consistency. Okay, so consistency in UI design is more or less concerned with making sure elements in a user interface are uniform. Okay, you know, they will look and they will behave the same way. This more or less helps users to constantly prove an assumption that they are right. Okay, uh, so it's more or less making it easy, making it familiar, and making it reliable. Because if a user sees a blue button on your homepage, they will want to see that same blue button maybe on your about page. Okay, this is what consistency is all about. You don't use a certain type of color or a certain type of element to represent one thing somewhere and then use another thing to represent it somewhere else. Okay, in this example, we have a flow of the wireframe here, and then we bring in a circle in between. That's being inconsistent. The user is put off because he or she now feels, oh, this is different. Okay, what does this now do? So it's more or less advisable when you have similar things, make them look the same way. Then we have the ninth principle, which is aesthetics. So aesthetics in design refers to visual attractiveness. Okay, so of a product or the UI or a website or an application. Okay. So more or less studies have shown that creating good aesthetics in a product, leads to better usability and experiences. Okay, so it's more or less how you go about it. Aesthetics is more or less subjective to whoever is designing or who you are designing for. So playful elements might be better for kids, professional elements will be better for working class people and the likes. So aesthetics is more or less subjective to who would use your application. But one thing to note is that you shouldn't go overboard with aesthetics because users tend to be put off when they see things that are extremely beautiful but they don't know how to go about it. Okay, so it's more or less finding a balance. Your design doesn't have to be too simple that it's too plain, but at the same time it doesn't have to be too beautiful that it's too complex. So there are still more principles. We can't really cover all of them, especially things like color and typography that are, extremely wide. Well, in the future video, most likely we'll be able to cover color and typography, but we have things like movement, we have things like patterns, we have things like framing and the likes. This is where we would stop for today. I hope you enjoyed the video and do have a wonderful day ahead.